An Israeli military spokesman has denied there's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. In an interview with BBC News Night, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht insisted there was electricity and water in the territory.
Cutting off food, water, electricity may be considered actions that violate international law. Do you accept that?
We do not have the commitment to supply Hamas electricity, people who attacked us. They've been in control for multiple years already in the Gaza Strip. They have their electricity. I'm seeing electricity in Gaza. I also see water in the south of Gaza where we ask people to move. There's no humanitarian crisis right now in Gaza.
There's no humanitarian crisis right now in Gaza?
Correct.
Can you explain what you mean?
I'm saying there's no humanitarian crisis. We've asked people to move. There's water and there's electricity.
All the doctors that we've spoken to, that we're seeing on the news constantly, are saying they've never witnessed scenes like this. Bodies being brought in one after another. There's no water coming out of the taps. The fuel is about to run out. How can we not say that's a humanitarian crisis?
Right now, I'm focused on what happened to the Israelis. You're running immediately to Gaza. We had a national catastrophe here. They started this. They came in with ISIL flags and slaughtered pregnant women, killed babies and killed families. That's not what we do.
Well, let's talk live now to Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht, international spokesman for Israel's Defence Forces. Thank you for being live here with us on BBC News. You told BBC News that there is no humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Are you serious?
I'm saying that Hamas is responsible. I'm saying that we have been saying for the last days to the people in Gaza City to move south. We gave them corridors of movement. There's water in the southern parts of Gaza. There's still electricity. And that's the situation right now on the ground. We're focused. I'm going to talk about our combat operations and the idea of spokesperson.
Well, before you do, we played that clip. You very clearly said there is no humanitarian crisis in Gaza. We've heard UNRWA say the lack of water is a massive problem. Only 24 hours left. British journalists have been told people are drinking seawater. Aid workers who spent their whole career in this line of work saying they've never seen anything like this. There is a real danger, isn't there, that if you say black is white, people simply won't believe you.
So we're running quickly to Gaza. They started this, and
that is not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you about denying that there's a humanitarian crisis. Just address that.
There's no humanitarian crisis in Gaza right now, and I want to say Hamas is responsible for this situation. There's water in the southern Gaza. We asked everybody not involved to move south. Last night, UNRWA came out with a tweet saying that fuel and other supplies were taken by Hamas. They didn't take that equipment to help their people. They're taking that for their military operations. They are stopping the people from moving south. We said when we came out with that request for the people to move south, Hamas are stopping them from moving.
You keep rolling what Hamas are doing into this very clear question I'm asking you about whether there is a humanitarian crisis. The UN have been saying consistently over the last few days that there is a catastrophic crisis, a calamity emerging on the ground. And you are simply saying they're either exaggerating or they're wrong, are you?
Yes, I am.
And you think that's believable? Given everything that we're seeing in terms of pictures, accounts, doctors talking, agencies talking, you think that is simply an exaggeration? They're not telling the truth?
No, the situation in Gaza is dire. They started this. We are doing everything we can, and we're asking the people to move south. Hamas have the means to help their people. They have the means to help their people. They have the cars. They have the capabilities, and we're seeing their activity. It is their responsibility. We're doing everything we can. Again, I remind you what happened here. They released an unprecedented attack on our civilians. Carnage babies, kidnapped grandmothers. We don't have to justify what we're doing now.
No.
We're at war with Hamas.
What I am saying to you is Hamas has to take responsibility for their actions, but Israel has to be responsible for what you're doing. So let me ask you a question about what you're doing. You told people to move south, and yet overnight targets around Rafah and Khan Yunis were hit. Palestinian people have been telling our reporters on the ground they simply do not know where to go that is safe.
When we see a Hamas target, we will go after it. It's that simple. We'll do whatever we can to minimize. Our Air Force is acting based on its procedures. When we see a Hamas capability or something that will threaten us, we will strike it. Taking into account international law, doing everything we can to minimize collateral damage.
Well, exactly on that point, doctors have been saying half the wounded they are seeing currently are children. You know what the casualty figures are. They're upwards now of 2,700 Palestinians. At what stage in this do you pause at all to reconsider what you're targeting, where you're targeting?
It's the same answer, Matthew. We will target anything that threatens Israel. If we see people wrapping up launchers in a building, this is a cynical enemy. They are entrenching themselves within their civilians. They're using them as human shields. We're doing everything we can, but our goal is very clear. This will never happen to Israel again.
Do you not worry, Hezbollah, watching these scenes, these pictures that are on the screen as you're talking, and potentially entering this conflict, actually joining the war, broadening the war, with Israel fighting on two fronts?
The country of Lebanon and the people of Lebanon have to ask themselves if they want to risk their future for Hamas. That's a very simple question. Just to remind you, Matthew, it wouldn't be wise for them to come into this. Our focus right now is dealing with Hamas in Gaza. We're not fighting the Palestinian people. We're not intentionally attacking children. We're doing everything we can. But go back to that Saturday on the 7th, 11 days ago. They came in, slaughtered our children, kidnapped people. They weren't fighting only our soldiers. They went after our civilians, our mothers, our children. We have 199 confirmed hostages kidnapped into Gaza, children, babies.
It was interesting listening to Martin Griffiths from the UN only yesterday saying it is not a contradiction to hold two thoughts at once, that it was an egregious act to take hostages and launch those attacks, but also that the Palestinian people had nothing to do with those things and should be protected. Do you agree with him?
I agree that we are not fighting the Palestinian people. They have been taken hostage by Hamas. We are fighting the Hamas. We're doing everything we can. It's a dire situation. But again, we can't let this happen again, Matthew. We have an obligation to defend our country and our people.
And on that, do you think you have the capacity to fight on two fronts? It hasn't happened, but that is the danger here of it spreading into Lebanon with Hezbollah launching attacks. Do you think the Israeli military has the capacity to fight on two fronts? Absolutely.
But as I said before, it wouldn't be worthwhile for Lebanon to come into this right now.
And what's the exit strategy? I know that the overall strategy, it's been said many times from Benjamin Netanyahu downwards, which is to destroy Hamas. What is the exit strategy? What happens the day after you go in for the ground offensive?
Matthew, I'm a military man. These are big questions that have to be asked to our political leadership. Right now, we're focused only on the mission.
And you think it's achievable?
I do. And it'll take as long as it takes. We'll do what we have to do.
Richard Hecht, we have to leave it there. We are out of time, but thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us live here on the programme.
Thank you, Matthew.